Alright, this video I want to make the statement that UFC does not contain all talent. I guess honestly I'm starting to respect the UFC a little bit more because it's turning more into a stand-up fight. There's less of that ground fighting stuff that I was really criticizing back in the past, because in my eyes that's not how real fighting is. I feel that when people are really good at stand-up fighting, the fight would end before they would even be wrestling on the ground the way that they used to do in the past. It's just that in the past, the people just were not talented in their stand-up fighting, so all the fights were happening on the ground because they didn't know what else to do. But I feel that now that it's become more popular and more people are training in it, people are actually learning some good boxing skills and kickboxing skills, and they're ending the fight before it even gets on the ground. So for example, I saw a few highlights of the most recent fights, and they had that one Weidman, I don't know how you say his name, but anyway, he got kneed in the face. As he was trying to take the person down to the ground, he got kneed in the face with some flying knee from some black guy. I don't even know what his name is. And then that ended the fight right there. But what I'm saying is that if they didn't have gloves on and they were really good at boxing and kickboxing, and on top of that they even had shoes on, and you're talking about streets, like there's no rules, the fight would even end before the flying knee would have occurred, because a good punch would be all that would be needed, or a good kick. But from what I saw, neither of them were really good in the stand-up. They weren't good at the kicks, they weren't really good at the punches, but the dude just kind of got a lucky knee in there to end the fight. But my thing is, scientifically speaking, if you're gonna put gloves on their fists, then why don't you put padding on their knees to make the knees less effective, or padding on the elbows to make the elbows less effective? The reason why they put padding on the fists is because it's so destructive. So essentially the fight, according to the pure fighting science, a lot of times it'll end from one good punch to the face, opposed to even getting to the knee strike or even getting to the ground. And then the other fight, what happened with the McGregor and I think it was the Eddie Alvarez, I just saw the end clip of him knocking him down. It was just a 4-punch combo, simple, from well, you see that all the time in boxing. But in a real situation, it might not even need 4 punches. It maybe just be 1 punch, because you have a bare fist and you knock him good with that 1 fist, and then pretty much the fight's over. So that's what I've been saying from the very beginning. And once you start integrating even more lethal techniques like eye jabs and chops to the throat and eye gouges and breaking a person's kneecap, things like that would end the fight completely, extremely quickly. It wouldn't even be on the ground, okay? But I see it heading in that direction, which is more of what real martial science is. But aside from that point, back to the topic, is what I'm saying is that UFC does not contain all talent, because I'm basically recognizing that I do give credit to a lot of these UFC people that are fighting nowadays. I noticed that a lot of them are in pretty good shape. Whether or not they're on steroids, I don't know. If they are on steroids or any other type of performance enhancing drugs, may it be legal or illegal, I don't respect them. Not just UFC fighters, but boxers, all athletes, basketball players, football players, Olympic athletes, cyclists, bodybuilders, anybody that works out at the gym. I don't respect anybody that takes any of that performance enhancing stuff. Steroids, none of that. I just don't. But if they don't take any of that stuff and they truly work out hard and they get fit, then I respect their fitness of what they're displaying, you know, because they look like they're pretty fit. They're not like some, you know, fat slobs or unhealthy weaklings in there that are unfit trying to fight. You know, they're actually pretty fit, so I respect that, you know. But I just want people to know that there's a lot of other talents out there, and just because I just don't like the idea of people believing that, oh, you know, he's only the best fighters in the world or the best martial artists of the world, you know, they're only in the UFC. To me, you know, is you know, that's a bullshit statement. You know, because you got a lot of talented people out there that are not in the UFC. They're in other areas, you know, other sports, or, you know, they're just dedicated athletes out there, dedicated artists, dedicated, you know, pretty much people who study self-defense. You know, so an example would be, okay, you know, Mayweather, for example, he's not in the UFC. You know, he's in a different sport, but he's super talented. He never stepped into a cage to box or kickbox or wrestle, but he's extremely talented. You know, and all the other boxers that stick to boxing and that are really talented, you know, like Muhammad Ali, Mike Tyson, Pacquiao, Evander Holyfield, you know, all these boxers are really good at what they do, but they're not in the UFC. They're not in the cage, but they're talented. You know, Bruce Lee's talented, but he never was in the UFC because it just didn't exist back then, and that's not what he cares about. Jet Li's super talented. He's not in the UFC. Tony Jaa's super talented. He's not in the UFC. You know, I even give props to like Jean-Claude Van Damme, Wesley Snipes, Scott Adkins, whoever. You know, some of these actors in movies are pretty skillful, pretty athletic, but they're not in the UFC, but they're talented as well. And basically just want to bring up, you know, just YouTube in general, which is just more of the world. You know, like more billions of people are involved in YouTube more than anything. And the YouTube is it includes the UFC and even more. You know, you can find videos of basketball, football, all sorts of sparring tournaments all over the world, and boxing, kickboxing, Thai boxing. I mean, YouTube is all, you know, all inclusive of many different things, and there's a lot of talented people on YouTube. So it's not just about the UFC, but it's bigger than that. You know, there's talent all over the world and different areas, and there's people that just refuse to even be on YouTube. You know, that they don't care about to have a presence online or in social media, and there's people out there like that, you know, that are really, really unknown. Not only are they not in the UFC, but they're not even on YouTube either. They're just silently practicing their arts and their ways, and they get really good at what they do, and they're more hidden from the society. An example might be some of these Shaolin monks in the temple. They're not all up on YouTube, you know, every day and showing everything that they do, but they exist. They're out there, and they're doing their thing, you know. And there's martial artists out there that are really good at what they do, that clearly are not on the UFC, and they might not even be on YouTube, but they're really good at what they do. And there's a lot of talented soldiers, Marines, Navy SEALs, police officers, you know, people that are in the military, and there's people out there that have concealed carry, that go to the gun range all the time. They're always constantly practicing how to shoot, and they're not in the UFC. They're not, you know, they might not even be on YouTube, but they're there. They're out there. They're trained. They're there to, you know, they're trained to survive. They might be saving people's lives. You know, I mean, like, there's a lot of talent out there, you know. And I'm starting to give recognition to some of these fighters in the cage. You know, they are fit, and some of them are getting better at combat. You know, as far as kickboxing is concerned, I would say they're still amateurs when it comes to stand-up fighting. Like they're not masters at all. Like they're just not, but they're getting better, you know, than they used to be. But they're not like a Floyd Mayweather Jr. They're not like a Muhammad Ali, where they've been boxing for their whole lives and they've perfected the art to the point where they barely get hit. I mean, these cage fighters are constantly hitting each other back and forth like they're like human punching bags, and they're getting severely damaged, and their careers are not lasting long because of all the damage that they're taking. A lot of them are starting to retire before the age of 30, and it's like such short careers because of all the damage that they're taking. But if they were really good at what they did, they wouldn't be damaged and they wouldn't have such short careers. It'd be so, they would have long careers like golfers, because it's like the golfer that's delivering a hard hit to the golf ball, but he never gets hit himself. He never hits himself with the club. He never gets hit by a golf ball. He never gets knocked out. But he's hitting that golf ball extremely hard, you know, to the point where if you put a human head where that golf ball was, that swing would kill the person. Same thing with the baseball players, you know, they're swinging so hard, and if they hit a human being that hard, they'd kill them. But they don't hit themselves with the bat. Occasionally there might be a baseball that's thrown to their face, but hopefully not. But baseball players' careers are a long career because they're designed to hit the balls and the object, you know, hit the ball. They're not designed to be hit. And a really good person in martial arts, in combat, just does not get hit. So if you see a lot of these UFC fighters getting hit, that means that they're not really that good at what they do. Because if they were that good, they wouldn't be getting hit. You know, it'd be like the Mayweather, where Mayweather is fighting against people that are really skilled, and he literally barely gets hit. You know, even fighting someone like Manny Pacquiao, who's really talented himself, you watch that boxing match, Mayweather barely gets hit. And there's all his opponents that he's fighting, he barely gets hit. You can literally count on your hand how many times he got hit hard in his career, because that's how good he was. I respect him. Even though I don't promote boxing as far as combat, being a combat sport is concerned, as far as the health, you know, implications, I respect his level of skill. And these cage fighters, they're not at that level. They're not even close. But they are getting better than what they used to be in the stand-up game. And because of that, it's highlighting more of what real combat is. It's more about precision. It's more about like getting that one really good hit in to really end the fight, because that's how a real fight out there in the streets is. It's not about this ground and pound and arm bars and chokes, and it's not about that, because in my eyes, in my studies, like, if there's really no rules, the fight would end. The fight is supposed to end way before it even gets close to a ground fight. If they're really good at what they do, you know, like somebody like Mayweather, and he has no boxing glove on, if he gets that one really good jab in, that could pretty much end the fight. You know, just like that one really good stab, that one good shot with a gun, that one good hit is all it takes. You know, and that's the reality of what I see. That's the reality of what I train in. And it's the same thing with Bruce Lee. You know, it's all about perfection of the art. It's not about taking hits. It's not about you hit me, I hit you, and let's just keep going back and forth to see who can last long. It's not about that. To me, real combat is not the Rocky Balboa who can't fight at all, can't box at all, just going in there getting hit like 400 times, and then he gets back up and then knocks the other person out. That's not real boxing. That's not a good boxer. That's a joke. That's a disgrace to boxing. Boxing to me is somebody who's just, so good at what he does that he just doesn't get hurt. And then that is an endless development towards perfection, to the point where, yes, it's a dangerous sport. Martial arts is dangerous. It can be dangerous, but you're just so good at what you do that it doesn't become dangerous for you. It becomes dangerous for the people that are trying to fight against you. It's kind of like working with the nunchucks. It could be dangerous if you don't know what you're doing. You can knock yourself out. You could break your own teeth. You could break your own nose. You could hurt yourself. But when you're good at it, then you don't get hurt. Then you use it as a weapon to hurt others that are trying to hurt you. And it's the same thing with a gun. If you're good with the gun, you're safe with the gun, then it's not dangerous to have a gun. It's dangerous when you don't know what you're doing with that gun, and you're unsafe with that gun, you're irresponsible with that gun, then it becomes dangerous. And I just feel a lot of these people out there, including the people in the UFC and the people that are practicing MMA, a lot of them just aren't that good. They really don't know what they're doing. And then they're miseducating the public into thinking that what they're doing is real martial arts, and what they're doing is really skillful and talented, when it's not, in my eyes. And I just want people to recognize and to see that real talent is not UFC. Real talent is out there in this real world through the people that you meet directly, and through all over media, not just the UFC media, but all over media. Media including YouTube, media including Hollywood, media including the films created out of other countries such as China, media including Facebook, media including Instagram, media including just everything that you could see on the internet, and also talent that's hidden, that's not even contained in the internet, which exists. And we should learn from the world and not limit ourselves to, who's the best UFC fighter now? Okay, let's learn from just him. No, let's learn from everybody who has talent. And like I said, it's not just restricted to the UFC, and I see that I really don't like to see that them having a monopoly over the people's consciousness into believing that, you don't fight in the UFC, so that means you're not good, or that that you ain't shit. I mean? Like, that to me is complete bullshit. Because it's like, Mayweather doesn't fight in the UFC, and he clearly is not. He clearly isn't just a nobody. He's really good at what he does, and he makes a boatload of more money than all the fighters in the UFC. And Bruce Lee as well. Like, he found a way to make money without having to compete in those type of combat sports. But I feel that people that are true to the martial arts will not give in to impurifying their arts by stepping into the cage, or any type of tournament for that matter. Because as soon as you step into a tournament, you're impurifying your art. You're not being true to it any longer. And this is not just talking about the UFC and the cage, but it's also talking about all sorts of tournaments. Taekwondo point sparring, or whatever tournament, karate point sparring. It's all and purifying the arts. So I see that a real martial artist doesn't restrict himself to any tournaments, but he makes his own rules, and he doesn't let other people make the rules for him, but he makes his own. He keeps his art pure, pure to reality, and um, that's totally different. It's a different category. So every sport is being categorized. So they're making differences between, okay, this is Muay Thai, okay, this is Taekwondo point sparring, okay, this is Karate point sparring, this is Judo point sparring, this is BJJ point sparring, this is cage fighting sparring, this is boxing sparring, this is kickboxing sparring. Like, everybody has their categories of what combat sport that they want to get involved in. But a martial artist is beyond those categories. A martial artist is not training for tournaments. A martial artist is training for survival, and that is not bound by any rules of sport. If anything, it's something that may or may not be bound by the rules of the law. But when your life is on the line, even that goes out the window, because it's just, a person doesn't really have the right to take your life. And if somebody's trying to take your life, then you're allowed to do whatever necessary to stop that threat. Up to and including taking the life of the individual who's threatening you. And there's absolutely no way that you could be told that you can't do this technique or that technique because it's not allowed. No, like, you do what you need to do to stay alive. If a woman's getting raped, you can't tell her, oh, you can't scream, you can't grab, you can't bite, you can't punch, you can't eye gouge, you can't stab, you can't shoot, you can't impose rules upon an individual who is fighting for their life. And a martial artist is constantly training within that dynamic of preparation for combat that is not bound by rules. He keeps his art pure to the science of survival. That, to me, is an entirely different category than what you see in combat sport. And that, to me, deserves respect. Because somebody like Bruce Lee was an individual that was representing that way. And there are other people out there in this world that represent that way. They're just more hidden, or they're just unknown. But there's a lot of people out there that do have concealed carry, and they will shoot and kill you if necessary. And those are the types of individuals that don't play games. These individuals are prepared, for violent encounters, and they'll do what's necessary to stop the threat. But just think about an individual who doesn't have a gun, but he's doing that with his body, where it's like, we're not playing games here. This is not to entertain the people, but if you try to take my life, then I'll do what I need to do to survive. And I'm not going to restrict myself to any type of limitation. I'm not going to put on a glove. I'm not going to, wait for you to put your mouth guard on, or have you have your groin protector on, or let you have that referee standing by. This is completely different, and I think in a way the UFC and MMA can kind of bring greater awareness to what real martial arts is, and then greater awareness to something that's beyond what you see in the cage, because there clearly is something beyond what you see in the cage. They even say it in their slogan, this is as real as it gets. They're pretty much admitting that what you see is not real, because their slogan wouldn't be this is as real as it gets if it was actually real. So it is not real. It is as real as it gets, but the real is not that. The real is the pure science of combat, you know, that involves no limitations. And that is what real martial artists study, you know. And not all martial artists will sell out to become fighters. Some martial artists will stick true to the purity of the science of limitless, you know, expression in combat, up to and including firearms and all sorts of different weapons if necessary, you know. But it's a different category. And most of the people in this world, probably over 99.9% of the people in the world, will not ever be fighting in a cage or fighting in the UFC. So it just makes more sense for people to get more involved in the real martial arts opposed to limiting themselves within a cage of which they'll never even fight in to begin with, because it's not a part of their reality. You know, just like people that play basketball don't need to limit themselves to the rules of the NBA if they're never going to be in the NBA. So then there's the difference between the NBA basketball way of playing and then the way that you play basketball on the streets, you know, is different, you know. And we shouldn't limit ourselves when it's not necessary. You know, these individuals that are being hired to fight in the cage or whatnot, they're being paid to limit themselves. You know, they're being paid to fight, you know, according to a certain way, you know, that's bound by certain rules. They're getting paid to do that, you know. But pure fighting is not about getting paid. It's about just, you know, saving your life at that moment, you know. And it's different, you know. And that's what I want to illustrate. You know, some of these, you know, I acknowledge there are some boxers out there that have existed that are really good at what they do. Even though I don't agree to boxing as being a sport, I wouldn't get involved in it. I wouldn't have my children get involved in it. And frankly, I don't want to be associated with people involved in it. You know, because to me it's something that I feel that we should grow beyond. But I do respect certain individuals that have obtained a very high level of proficiency in that sport. And as far as the cage fighting is concerned, it's a very new sport, and there's still so much that they're missing. They are not as skillful as people think that they are, you know, as people perceive them to be. You know, I think a lot of them are not, to me, a lot of them are amateurs. You know, I'm not necessarily saying that I'm better than all of them, but I'm saying this as an assessment based on my research and based on my experience that they are not that skillful. It's like somebody who watches NBA basketball for 30 years and he's seen the greatest players that ever lived. He's seen a Michael Jordan, he's seen, you know, a Magic Johnson, he's seen a Shaquille O'Neal, he's seen a LeBron James, he's seen a Kobe Bryant, he's seen a Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. He's seen all these talented people. But then say he moved to another country, say, you know, Europe or China, and then that country doesn't know anything about the NBA, but they have their own basketball league, and then they got a bunch of amateur basketball players that are not even that good, but then they think they're the best in the world. But then the person that knows the NBA, that's been watching the NBA for over 30 years, knows that these basketball players are garbage compared to the real basketball players in the NBA. He knows this for a fact. He himself may not be a great basketball player, but that's besides the point. The point is he knows the difference between really good basketball players and just amateurs. And that's pretty much what I'm talking about when it comes to the UFC. It's a bunch of amateurs. Like, they are not really as good as people think that they are, you know, according to my eyes. You know, because as I stated, if somebody's really, really, really good, you know, they barely ever get hit. You know, it's like somebody that's really good at basketball, he doesn't miss a shot. You know, he just doesn't miss. You know, he's not somebody who's constantly missing all the time. You know, and this UFC, this cage fighting is designed to generate money, so they're doing everything that they can to hype up fighters to make it seem like they're really good when they're really not that good. Because somebody like Ronda Rousey, for example, if she was really that good, there's no way that somebody would be able to knock her out with just a roundhouse kick the way that she got knocked out. It's impossible. No way. But she just is not that good. And for somebody to be hyped up over just 12 fights, it's ridiculous. But then when you got somebody that I've heard, like, you know, Layla Ali, you know, Muhammad Ali's daughter, who's winning all these boxing matches, you know, but then she goes unnoticed. You know, I think a lot of times it's a racism, it's discrimination. You know, when you got a certain minority that's very, you know, talented in what he does, but then the media doesn't want to focus attention on that because they don't want to give fame and attention to a minority. You know, but then when you got somebody that's average, that's not even that good, like a Ronda Rousey, they make a big deal about her because this is how the world is. It's racist. You know, that's what Hollywood is. They don't want minorities to take leading roles. Even if they're talented, they cross them off the list. And that's essentially what I'm talking about. Is like these main channels of the media, from the UFC to the Hollywood to the presidential elections, it's racism that's driving home these facets of society, and they're eliminating minorities, you know, regardless of how talented they are, you know. And if it's not racism, then it's just favoritism, you know. It's just people are given fame not necessarily because they're the best or they're the most talented, but they're given fame simply because they are a part of the inner network of people that have these special connections. But real martial arts talent is beyond that. Real martial arts talent is not about, you know, having to be a part of that inner network. It's just something that is just there, you know, regardless of whether or not you're involved in social media, within the cage, within the UFC, or within whatever tournament. Your talent is just there, you know. And the UFC should not have the monopoly over people's vision of what martial arts is or what they deem to be seen as talent, you know. And that's the way I see it. You know, it's the entertainment industry, and there's a safer approach, a smarter approach to developing yourself as a proficient martial artist, as an individual who's capable of defending himself without having to engage in this type of violent activity. You also gotta open your eyes and realize that these fighters in the cage are getting paid millions of dollars to put their lives at risk, to sacrifice their health for money and fame. But individuals who practice martial arts, who are regular people, they're not getting paid to put their lives at risk for anything. So it only makes sense to train in an intelligent way to protect your safety, you know, um, and to not use these individuals that you see in the cage as an example of how to train to be better in martial arts, because they are not doing it the way that you're supposed to be doing it. Um, Essentially, in real martial arts, it's pretty easily identifiable to see who is more talented than whom, and the fight shouldn't even have to go further than necessary in order to determine, who has a greater advantage or a bigger edge, between two individuals sparring. But it's just sad that the society just really wants to see people in pain, and they want to see plenty of blood. They want to see people unconscious, knocked out. But then when somebody suddenly dies in the cage or suddenly dies in the boxing ring, they want to pretend like they're shocked, which is just completely ridiculous. It's like, what do you expect to happen? You're paying $5,000, $2,000, or however much money to watch people fight, and then you're gonna be shocked if somebody ends up dying because of the fight. But you're paying for it. You're paying to watch that. I think that martial arts should be used as a way of learning how to defend yourself, but not used as a way to entertain people, in which to promote violence, excessive violence, let's say. I think that's the issue. Because even like this last fight, the guy kneed the guy in the face, the guy had blood everywhere, and then the guy jumps out the cage and starts celebrating, and it's like, alright, you just bloodied this person up, he's a bloody mess, and now you're celebrating. But that's not how it's supposed to be. It's like a police officer who ends up shooting and killing somebody that has a gun, and then he celebrates after killing the person. Like, he literally celebrates. He starts dancing and smiling and giggling and laughing, calling all his friends, telling everybody. But you're not supposed to do that. Even though you might have been justified in killing this person that had a gun, it doesn't mean that you're supposed to celebrate when you just kill somebody. And Bruce Lee illustrates that in his movies very well. Every time he kills somebody, just like when he killed Chuck Norris in The Return of the Dragon, or The Way of the Dragon, he killed Chuck Norris, he didn't smile at all. He was really sad, and you could see, every time he kills somebody, you could see his face, it just drops, and he gets sad. Because anybody that hurts somebody should never feel happiness and pleasure from hurting somebody. That already is an indication that this person is not a martial artist. This person might be a murderer who feels pleasure from seeing other people in pain or inflicting pain onto others. That is not martial arts. So what's happening in the cage is severely miseducating the public into what martial arts is, regardless of how talented they are. It's not about that. It's about what is shaping people's minds into thinking martial arts is, into glorifying violence in which to make people become celebrities for being violent. And I see a problem with that, a huge problem. You know, I disagree with that completely. You know, I really do. You know, so that's a part of my work, is just trying to get people to think about that. You know, because even right now, I read an article recently, they're talking about making marijuana legal in California. And then all of a sudden the article's talking about how all the health benefits of marijuana all of a sudden. But then not too long ago, they're locking up, you know, thousands, if not millions of minorities for selling marijuana. But then now all of a sudden, since it's going to be legal, now they're talking about the health benefits of it. You know, it's like, because they can make money off of cage fighting, then they're going to glamorize it, make it seem like this is the lifestyle, this is good for you, you should watch it, you should support it, you should get involved, you should cheer, you should pay to watch people be violent with one another. Go ahead, you know, it's great, it's fascinating, it's so amazing. Get your kids involved, get everybody involved, because they're making money off it. But the truth is, it's violence. No matter if it's violence on the streets, no matter if it's violence in the cage, no matter if it's violence in the boxing ring, it's still, no matter if it's violence in the home, it's still violence. You know, it's just very hypocritical. You know, that you'd have, you know, maybe somebody who, you know, like Ray Rice, who plays football, is a violent sport, but then, you know, he ends up getting in an argument with his wife in the elevator and hits her, and then they make a big deal about that. But then they don't make a big deal about the sport of football, which is violence in itself. You know, there's just a lot of hypocrisy that I see. And I think it just takes a little awareness from the people to kind of wake up and see what's going on, and to kind of fix it within their own lives. Because I think the more that you watch this stuff, the more that it shapes your reality. And then everybody that's watching the cage, they think, oh, that's real fighting. But it's not real fighting. You know, real fighting on the streets, a lot of times, you know, there's guns involved. A lot of times it's just drive-by shootings. You know, people dying just from car accidents or whatever, just random things that happen on the streets. That's real, you know. But the more that we engulf ourselves in fantasy, the more that we're distorted from what is reality. And reality is something that I think we should be grounded in. You know, it's about being real. You know, even Bruce Lee's talking about being a real human being. And that's what I'm about. I want to strive to be real in everything that I do. And when I study martial arts, I want to study the real. I don't want to study the fake. I want to study the real. I want to be proficient in the real. You know, that's what's important to me. You know, so that's why I always mention, you know, real martial arts, not the fake stuff. I'm looking for the real. Just like people that shop around for diamonds, they want a real diamond. You don't want a fake diamond. What are you going to do with the fake diamond? You know, what use is a fake diamond? You want a real diamond. You want the real. You know, you don't want fake currency. You want real currency. You want the real. You know, and I think when people are deceived into thinking that the fake is real, that's, you know, that's sad. You know, And I think that people just need to educate themselves, to see for themselves the difference between the real and the false. And when you do experience the real, you know, there really isn't any turning back, because you already know.